Oh god, oh my god, you guys. I accidentally deleted my Libs of TikTok file. I've been saving little tidbits of info for months, as I do. You know I do this if you ever watched a video or a stream where I describe my work process. I figured it was finally time to do the video now that the whole Taylor Lorenz thing is going on. Went to grab my file and it was gone. And the worst part is, I'm pretty sure I just mindlessly deleted it when clearing out some old stuff because it was right near the stuff I was deleting. Well, that's what I get for being a boomer and keeping everything on my desktop, I guess. But you know what? Maybe it's not so bad. I think I can recreate everything I had saved up well enough. Let's give it a shot. Before we can talk about Taylor Lorenz, we have to talk about Libs of TikTok. Libs of TikTok is a Twitter account that began with the gimmick of dredging up especially cringy progressive and socialist videos on TikTok and reposting them with limited or no commentary. Cue me getting angry at Americans using the word liberal incorrectly for the billionth time, but, you know, whatever. We all know what's going on. At the beginning, Libs of TikTok functioned a lot like the various posting their L's accounts. These accounts would provide little to no commentary of their own, simply reposting other people's content. The idea is that while the audience of the original posters of that content would be supportive of the message, the audience of the L's account wouldn't be. The L's account would therefore act as a quasi-expose, even though the content they post is entirely public and accessible to anyone. And the value would come not through adding commentary, but providing the content to an audience that is explicitly poised against it. Now, if you were to ask the question, why is reposting other people's content bad? The surface level answer is, of course, you're stealing content without reacting to it. That's what I bitched at on EFAP for 3 weeks in a row recently regarding Hassan. Go watch that if you like. But while Hassan outright steals content wholesale, playing it for his stream while providing no additional commentary and no citation, the courts have ruled that reposting content while adding no additional commentary, with the intention that the content nonetheless be seen in a different light because it's being transmitted to a different audience by a different person, constitutes a transformative use. That's the whole reason that Sargon won his lawsuit against Aquila, obviously. So, since this sort of thing actually isn't theft, what's the next level answer to the question, why is reposting other people's content bad? And the progressive answer seems to be that it has to be bad, because while Twitter and TikTok and other platforms don't ban the original posters of the content, they have banned some of the most infamous L's accounts, like trans women posting their L's, e-girls posting their L's, and Vosh fans posting their L's.
You call it selling out your principles?
Haha, not today, not this time. Even though these accounts also simply reposted content while adding only some of their own commentary, they all eventually got nuked from orbit by Twitter, presumably because the act of shining a spotlight on the bad behavior of members of protected classes or people who are politically correct just brings too much heat down on the platform. Libs of TikTok for a long time managed to ride that line of culpability perfectly, and so they didn't get a quick ban like those other accounts that I mentioned. The Libs of TikTok account was previously several other gimmick accounts, tweeting about Cuomo at one point and then as a potted plant in the White House at another, but the whole reposting people's manic rants with no comment thing went viral repeatedly, so that was the gimmick that stuck. But, like its brethren, Libs of TikTok would eventually fly too close to the sun. Though the account posted all sorts of leftist content initially, Libs of TikTok eventually focused in on posting videos made by teachers in the context of Florida's Don't Say Gay bills, where left-leaning teachers openly mocked the liberal idea of neutrality in education. Defied the parents of children who may have been LGBT questioning.
Hey, if your parents don't love and accept you for who you are this Christmas, fuck them. I'm your parents now. I'm proud of you. Drink some water. I love you. Bye.
Advocated for the position of pedophiles, or as they call, minor attracted persons.
I use the term minor attracted person, or MAP, in the title and throughout the book for multiple reasons. First of all, because I think it's important to use terminology for groups that members of that group want others to use for them. And MAP advocacy groups like Before You Act have advocated for use of the term MAP. They've advocated for it primarily because it's less stigmatizing than other terms like pedophile. A lot of people, when they hear the term pedophile, they automatically assume that it means a sex offender. And that isn't true, and it leads to a lot of misconceptions about attractions toward minors. I've definitely heard the idea that you brought up, though, that the use of the term minor attracted person suggests that it's okay to be attracted to children. But using a term that communicates who someone is attracted to doesn't indicate anything about the morality of that attraction.
Here's mocking that liberal idea of neutrality again. These people don't believe in the idea of an ideology-free space where ideas can be formed and tested.
To the conservative news source that wrote an article about me that seemed really focused on the flags I have in my classroom, there's a couple of things you missed actually in here. The first thing you missed is all 13 principles of the Black Lives Matter movement hung up at the top of my wall here, because I want my students to know that that flag is not just a decoration, but that we actually live out these principles in our everyday life. You definitely missed my smaller posters, including this one about getting vaccinated, about voting, all these ones I have from Jay Salazar that are Black historical figures. Man, you missed a lot, including some of the memorabilia and awards I've won as Michigan Teacher of the Year. But go off about my flags.
Talking to toddlers about intersex for some reason.
Here's a developmentally appropriate way to talk to toddlers about bodies and gender. You know the body parts that your diaper or your panties or your underwear cover? Those are called privates. Everyone has privates. Private means that they belong to you and only you. In the front, everybody has genitals, but there are different kinds of genitals. Some genitals are called a penis. Some are called a vulva. Others look maybe a little bit like each in some ways, or kind of like neither, or somewhere in between. People with those kind of genitals are called intersex. When babies are born, parents sometimes guess their gender based on their genitals. They tend to guess boy for babies who have a penis and girl for babies who have a vulva. Sometimes parents guess wrong though, and that's okay. Everybody makes mistakes sometimes. People whose parents guessed wrong about their gender are called transgender.
And here's apologia for enthusiastic consent for children having sex with adults.
Also, if young people are initiating sexual activities with adults or enthusiastically involved, we can't be effective in working with them if we assume that all such relationships start with a predatory or criminally inclined adult. As we'll see in the discussion, young people bridle at being forced into this box of being seen as being the victim of a predator.
I can actually keep this list going for a very long time. Literally just scroll down the Libs of TikTok account yourself if you want to see these clips. There's got to be hundreds at this point. But as more and more teachers started making TikTok videos about the various ways in which they were subverting the system, Libs of TikTok found more and more success shining a spotlight on these people. The account was so successful that Tucker Carlson gave it a shout out on April 8th.
So in classrooms, amaze.org isn't even necessary a lot of times. Some teachers do the jobs themselves. We know that in part because of the hard work of a Twitter account called Libs of TikTok, which you ought to follow before it's banned if you want to know what may be happening in your child's school. Libs of TikTok just unearthed this video. It shows a teacher bragging to her students about her sex life. Little kids. Watch.
Man, y'all thought me teaching the children about me being poly was crazy. But not only that, but they also know that I'm gender fluid. This was all well and good until October, when I also explained to them that I'm pagan, so I am also a witch. And I come into work and one of the children goes, "Lois, are you a boy? You have short hair." And his sister goes, "No, Lois is a girl." And a third child, who's my favorite, suddenly yells, "No guys, we've been over this. Lois isn't a boy or a girl. Lois is a witch."
So underneath all of this, needless to say, and you can't say it enough, is narcissism. It's about me and my identity and my journey. It's not about you or your children teaching them anything. It's about me. Let me talk about me some more.
And by April 13th, Libs of TikTok had been brigaded and spam reported, causing Twitter to temporarily ban the page for 12 hours. The violation was hateful conduct, even though, like I said before, all they really did was repost and spotlight other people's stuff. But the whole thing really blew up with Taylor Lorenz. The Libs of TikTok account maintained its anonymity since its creation, as the creator has stated that they didn't want to be publicly known since they feared backlash. But Taylor Lorenz, for some reason, began to suspect Christina Pushaw, the press secretary of Governor Ron DeSantis, as being involved with the account. Acting like every other scumbag reporter, Lorenz emailed Pushaw with extremely short notice, hoping to be able to publish a line that would read something like, "Pushaw did not respond for comment," because that looks a lot worse than it actually is. But Pushaw did respond, and also mocked Lorenz publicly for the underhanded tactics. Lorenz's reply read, "Will note that you declined to comment on your relationship with the account," which was also mocked because the only relationship Pushaw has with the Libs of TikTok account account is liking the tweets. In the end, Lorenz's article in the Washington Post would drop on April 19th, in which she described digging through archived versions of the Libs of TikTok account. Or rather, she just took the digging that Travis Brown did, a software developer. But the research spanned back to the White House potted plant gimmick, the Cuomo gimmick, and even earlier, where it was discovered that the account was first known as Shia_Ray, and the owner publicly identified herself as a real estate investor in Brooklyn. As Shia Ray, the account live tweeted from the January 6th Capitol riots, claiming to have been in attendance. The account's display name was HYUK, and when the website libsoftiktok.us was registered, it was done so under that legal name. The phone number that website is registered to is also the same number attached to Chaya Raychuk's business profile in real estate. When Lorenz called the number, she was hung up on. And when Lorenz visited the address attached to this information in LA, the woman at the door refused to identify herself. But the Libs of TikTok account would later post a picture of Lorenz through the bars of a front door, stating, "Which of my relatives did you enjoy harassing the most at their homes yesterday? Hey Chaya, is this you?" Okay, joking aside, on the one hand, I don't like this tendency of the media to hunt down people with the incorrect political opinions and badger them at their places of residence like this. It reminds me of when CNN got so booty blasted, they threatened to dox a Reddit user by the name of Han Asshole Solo for making fun of CNN with a Trump gif back in the day. But on the other hand, keep in mind, Libs of TikTok does sometimes do comparable things. They expose the real faces and sometimes the real workplaces of the people that they put up for display. And Libs of TikTok does it because they disagree with their politics. Both of them, from their own points of view, believe they're doing the right thing. And both of them consider some form of doxing or public exposure, or whatever you want to call it, justified because of the actions of their political opponents. The question you have to ask, though, is it justified? The person behind the Libs of TikTok account believes they're exposing groomers and saving kids. And if that's the case, then there's probably a solid argument. But Taylor Lorenz believes that the Libs of TikTok account is actively harming LGBT youth, getting innocent teachers suspended and fired, instituting a witch hunt. And if that's true, that's also a solid argument against it. So I guess we need to find out which of these interpretations is true, if either of them. Maybe examining Lorenz's claims about the Libs of TikTok account will help out. Claim 1, regarding Tyler Wren. Tyler Wren, a former English teacher in Oklahoma, posted a video telling LGBTQ kids shunned by their parents that Wren was proud of them and loved them. It was featured on Libs of TikTok last week. Since being featured on the page, Wren has been barraged with harassment and death threats. Now, this is a video that we watched earlier, and Lorenz's description of the video's content is missing some key context.
Hey, if your parents don't love and accept you for who you are this Christmas, fuck them. I'm your parents now. I'm proud of you. Drink some water. I love you. Bye.
Lorenz excludes the part of the clip where Wren says, "I'm your parents now." The clip's inclusion on the Libs of TikTok page plays into the rightist conception of the culture war, to be sure, but the exclamation that teachers should supplant the parental role plays into the leftist conception of the culture war as well, something that Lorenz left out in her claim. Claim 2, that Libs of TikTok posted a video of a woman teaching sex education to children in Kentucky, calling the woman in the video a predator. Again, this isn't entirely accurate. Here's what the actual thread looks like. The first post reads, "This woman is running a sexy summer camp for children in Kentucky. She says she thinks it's good for toddlers to masturbate," with this accompanying video clip.
That's how we should, like get down with yourself, explore your own body. Masturbation is really healthy, and I recommend it to people of all ages. All ages. As soon as my nephews could talk, they were doing that. That's what they were doing. Kids touch themselves. Kids start to ask questions, and we teach them the language for their bodies, right? That's your nose, touch your nose, show Aunt T, you can touch your nose. But my sister's not saying that when they're tugging at their penis, right? But it feels good, right? We have to learn ways to talk to young people about this so that they know how to explore their body consensually so that it's not in public, right? We don't want people exploring their bodies in public. That's not consensual. But exploring your body at any age, grandmas, grandpas, all of us need to be exploring our body.
The second post reads, "I worked with the school systems. My job was not to teach sex ed. I try to figure out ways to work this into the schools. This woman is a predator." So Lorenz was correct. Libs of TikTok did indeed call her a predator, but Lorenz left out all of the context of exactly what was happening at this Kentucky sexy summer camp. And by the way, the camp was independently investigated, separate from the whole Libs of TikTok story, by Chris Rufo writing for City Journal, where he describes a non-profit coalition called Sexy Sex Ed, which organized a series of sexy summer camp events targeted towards minors that included lessons on sex liberation, gender exploration, BDSM, being a sex worker, worker, self-managed abortions, and sexual activity while using licit and illicit drugs. Sexy Sex Ed's publicly available event calendar lists the following classes and workshops: Sex with Me, Self-Pleasure Workshop, Gender Diversity, Let's Talk About Sex, Sexy Trans Sex Ed, The 3 Ps, Pee, Poop, Pee, Poop, and Pleasure, Sex on Drugs, and Eugenics in Appalachia. Keep in mind, this is a camp for teenagers going as young as 13. And hey, while I might have been jerking off at 13, women like this were the last thing on my mind as I was doing it. Claim 3, that Libs of TikTok was leaning hard into groomer discourse, calling for any teacher who comes out as gay to their students to be fired on the spot. And yes, that's actually exactly what the tweet says. Here is the accompanying video.
So today I came out to my students. Here's a little story. So in my 5th grade classroom, we have a unit where we talk about identity and how people identify. And we talk about traditions and customs that are handed down from ancestors and things like that. So I modeled for the kids today how I identify myself. And in doing so, I told them that I identify as a mom, as a sister and a daughter, as a teacher. I said, and I identify as a cis woman. And I explained what that was because they had no idea what I was talking about. And then I said, and I identify as gay. In my 17 years of teaching, I've never come out to my kids before. And I was so nervous to even say it out loud to them, but they didn't even bat an eye. It was really awesome.
When I was in grade 5, that year was the first sex ed course we had, and it dealt with physical, biological reproduction, how it works in plants and bugs and various types of animals and humans. The social component of sex and puberty waited until grades 6 and 7. What this person is describing is not only the social component of sex, but identity from an intersectional framework, and the intersectional lens is inherently political. I didn't get into this type of stuff until first-year gender studies at university. To me, this seems like it's too much for grade 5. It's not abusive, it's not grooming, but certainly inappropriate for the age range. Claim 4, that Libs of TikTok pushed the false conspiracy theory that schools were installing litter boxes in bathrooms for students who identify as cats. And yep, I don't even need to confirm this one. I went over this in a weekly sip myself. That one felt a bit too funny to be true, no matter how accepted furries might be nowadays. This is an L for Libs of TikTok. They got this one wrong. And claim 5, that Libs of TikTok thinks learning about LGBT identities and issues is abusive, and that public schools are government-run indoctrination camps. Again, the quotation is correct, but Lorenz leaves out the included video, where the teacher in question has set up a preschool pride parade. Acclimating kids to political activism before they even know what politics is does seem to be a form of indoctrination to me. Most of the allegations that Taylor Lorenz levies against Libs of TikTok follows this pattern. She gets some stuff right, but she purposefully leaves out the context that is the most damning to her position. It is also probably important to talk about which popular Libs of TikTok posts that Lorenz just straight up ignores, even though they too are an important part of the account's story. Like, for example, a New York State University professor's comments on adult sexual activity with babies.
Well, there's a couple things to say here. One is, even if you are looking for a threshold, let's say there's a threshold, I'm making this number up, but let's say it's at age 8. Still, that tells you that some adult child sex is permissible. Second, the notion that it's wrong even with a 1-year-old is not quite obvious to me. There are reports in some cultures of grandmothers filleting the baby boys to calm them down when they're colicky. Now, I don't know if this is true, but this is sort of widely reported as occurring in at least one culture. And it working, that the grandmothers believe this actually works. If this were to be true, and again, I don't know it to be true, if it were to be true, it's hard to see what would be wrong with it. So, yeah, I guess I think, no, I don't think there's a blanket period beyond which this is permissible. If we're interested in willing participation, which is the way I structured it, then yeah, there's a point below which people aren't willing participants in anything because they don't have intentions or they don't have the sort of mental states that allow for willing participation. But no, I don't think it's blanket wrong at any age.
Or a medical student who admitted to purposefully missing a person's vein and taking delight in jabbing them with the needle twice after the patient laughed at her pronoun pin. Or the theater that advertised the Family Sex Show, a theater show which opens up conversations around relationships, offering safe and positive learning to children, young people, and guardians about bodies and relationships. The show is advertised to families with young kids, where the kids can come to learn about sex, porn, masturbation, all with fully nude actors on stage.
Hello, my name's Josie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman with dyed red hair, which is half up, half down today. I'm wearing gold hoop earrings, which are not real because I do not have my ears pierced. I run this egg and I have been making and producing the Family Sex Show along with lots of other people over the last few years. If you're watching this video, then you might already have, or you might be thinking about buying some tickets to the show, or you might just be wondering why we thought making it was a good idea. Great question. We wanted to make something that came at the topic of relationships and sex in a light way, in a way that would open conversations, in a way that would encourage people to ask questions, and to allow for that space of vulnerability and not knowing and making mistakes. We hope that the show kind of adds to the more creative or alternative relationships and sex education that is out there at the moment in all different forms. And I guess we really wanted to make the show that we wish that we'd had when we were younger, and also part of our adult selves felt like or feels like they need now as well. And mostly, if we know our bodies, then we know our rights.
Hello, my name is Ailey. I'm Programming and Engagement Manager at Tobacco Factory Theatres. I am a white female with brown blonde hair, and my pronouns are she, her. Family Sex Show is a fun and playful show for adults and children aged 5 and up. It offers an honest human sex education that is feminist, queer, non-binary, inclusive, and sex positive. This show can allow audiences of all ages to feel confident about their bodies, their boundaries, and their sexual health, and we really hope to see you here.
This is all stuff that your average, politically disengaged normie would see and immediately think, what the fuck is happening over there? This is some crazy deranged pedo shit. It's all stuff that Libs of TikTok has rightfully called out. And it's all stuff that Lorenz ignored in her expose because it doesn't fit the narrative that she wanted to spin. And it's not like Lorenz is somehow innocent either. She's got a history of doing this sort of crybullying. Back during the whole Claudia Conway shit show, which was a part of my video about people getting more conservative as they age, it turned out that it was Taylor Lorenz that even turned that into a story. She had befriended the 15-year-old daughter of Kellyanne Conway, encouraged her to make the TikTok videos that eventually went viral, and then amplified those TikToks when they came out on her own platform, using them as fodder for anti-Trump news articles. You know, when a woman who's 3 times the age befriends a 15-year-old and then pushes her into making expose videos on her high-profile parents, all so she can take them and turn around and boost her own career, that sounds like it might be grooming. And that's not the only time that Taylor Lorenz has done this sort of thing. When she got a whiff that tech entrepreneur Mark Anderson used the R slur, I'm assuming that's retard, in an online chat room, she rushed to tweet about it before even confirming it was accurate information. Once it came out that it was fake news, Lorenz issued a correction. But what the fuck, dude? Why did she feel the need to speedrun over to Twitter and drop the news like a tattletale? Maybe the career boost of being the reporter who scalped Mark Anderson mattered more to her than, actually being accurate. In August 2020, Lorenz published another expose, this time about the company Influences.com. Run by influencer talent agent Aradna Jacob, the company specializes in promoting influencers and content creation houses, a cancerous business model if I've ever heard one. But Lorenz claimed with no proof in her expose that Jacob leaked nude images of influencers working under her and exploited them in other ways, while simultaneously failing to disclose her relationship with Jacob's competitor, the United Talent Agency. Jacob filed suit in August 2021 against Lorenz and the New York Times, her then employer. But Lorenz was already spinning up the victim machine months earlier, where, in reply to Jacob's allegations, she tweeted out on March 9th, 2021, "It's not an exaggeration to say that the harassment and smear campaign I've had to endure over the past year has destroyed my life. No one should have to go through this. Bitch, you golden parachuted your way out of the Times over to Bezos' newsletter. Don't pretend your life is ruined. It's exactly the opposite. Your target had the gall to fight back. You didn't get your clean victory. And now you're taking offense that they didn't just lay over and die and offer up their corpse for your nourishment." Because it turns out that this was not Taylor Lorenz's first rodeo, a Taylor Lorenz posting her L's L's account on Twitter was quickly made, outlining all of the shit that she's done over the years. Jesus, these gimmick accounts are getting really specific, aren't they? Here's a scattershot of some of the dumb shit she's pulled over the years. She has, in no particular order, falsely claimed that the Drudge Report is harassing her, which was later refuted by Drudge. Asked people to stop investigating her public statements as a public figure, saying that it makes her feel uncomfortable. Complained about the bourgeois billionaire elite ruling class while simultaneously acting as their foot soldier and megaphone.
And I think when we think about free speech, we have to think about whose speech is free, right?
Doxed the mother of an Instagram star for apparently hating Muslims, while crying about how the blowback of publishing that article led to her apparently being doxed and harassed out of her apartment. Screeched about being stalked when her book account got followed by the stalker, and how much anxiety and stress it causes her to have these boundaries crossed, even though she, of course, showed up at Libs of TikTok's house. There's been a bunch of smaller data points not on the Lorenz L's account to consider as well. For example, Lorenz's investigations of the person behind Libs of TikTok led to her contacting an unrelated person with the same name, and that person was shortly after dogpiled. The Internet Archive has decided to exclude Lorenz's Twitter account from the Wayback Machine, despite the archive's stated mission to provide universal access to all knowledge. After the archive started turning up blanks, Lorenz's Twitter account went from having 16,800 tweets to only 3,500. Back in January of 2022, Lorenz posted a video explaining why it's bad when the media doxes a person who is a private figure without getting a statement from them.
A bunch of people are asking if I'm going to write about the West Elm Caleb story. No, I'm on book leave. I can't keep writing pieces for the New York Times. I literally do have a lot of deadlines. But journalists who are writing about it, please speak to people with experience in online harassment. I'm not gonna lie, I've been pretty horrified by a lot of the media coverage of this. A lot of people are just aggregating some of the cruelest commentary online and whipping it all up into a news story with absolutely no comment from Caleb or nuance about the situation. The top story on Google yesterday was literally this House Beautiful story that doxes Caleb, puts his full name in the story, zero comment from this man. After this whole article gleefully encourages this online harassment and doxing campaign, they literally use him to sell West Elm furniture through affiliate links. Once again, commercializing a harassment and doxing campaign. I think the media needs a total wake-up call in the way that they cover online harassment, and this is just the latest example of it. And reporters should be adding nuance, not just piling on.
Exactly what she did to the owner of Libs of TikTok.
I think it's rare to see an account gain so much prominence so quickly and be shaping these narratives in such an effective way, especially against trans people. My story was kind of long, but I really wanted to make the case like why this account mattered. And I think it's incredibly important, as someone that covers the influencer industry, to know who is exerting influence in this way. I mean, for all we knew, this could have been a foreign actor, right? Or someone we just didn't know. And so I thought, hey, look, this account has massive power, massive influence. This woman is basically on an entire right-wing media tour. She gave interviews to the New York Post, Tucker, all of that, and registered as a media company, registered a trademark. So yeah, I thought it was quite important and in the public interest to find out who was running it.
Lorenz has given multiple interviews where she talks about being harassed, doxed, discovered, and how absolutely harrowing it is.
And online harassment is such a misnomer. I think it's a huge problem because harassment is a tool to silence people, especially women and people of color, people from marginalized identities, for speaking out. And there's a very intentional goal behind it. It's obviously it's death threats and all of that and rape threats on the daily. And it's not just Twitter, it's every single surface, right? My cell phone number getting out there, people calling, people harassing my family members, stalking me, all of that is incredibly terrifying and invasive. And it's bled out into the physical world too, which is even more terrifying, right? Yeah. But to me, I think what especially the media needs to understand about this is, in terms of protecting their own reporters, is this is just a tool. Harassment is a tool to kind of discredit and silence journalists, and the right-wing media plays along with it.
You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life, and it's so isolating
and terrifying.
It's horrifying. I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
It's overwhelming. It's really hard.
And after all of this ridiculous hypocrisy came to light, Lorenz hit up Twitter once again to talk about how she is the victim in this situation, because the general public didn't like how she doxed the person behind Libs of TikTok. Of course, the Washington Post circled the wagons around her, reminding me a lot, frankly, of the special treatment that Sarah John got back in the day. Of course, the individual behind Libs of TikTok also got to speak to Tucker Carlson live eventually as well.
They wanted to intimidate me into silence, and unfortunately for them, that's just never going to happen.
Well, I'm grateful to hear that you're not intimidated. Were you a little surprised to see, of all people, Taylor Lorenz, who complained bitterly when we used her name on the air several months ago, who whined and cried on television because she had PTSD because people were criticizing her online? Were you surprised that it was her who came after you personally and tried to destroy your life?
Yeah, I thought that was really humorous. It added a really nice layer of humor on top of the whole story. And I think that the fact that it was Taylor Lorenz, who is a known, hypocrite, and she is known to dox people, the fact that it was her that was doing all this, I think it just helps people rally with support for me.
Have you noticed, I know you're not a psychiatrist, or perhaps you are, I don't know who you are, but are you surprised that the people who are the most deeply enmeshed in narcissism, who talk about themselves the most, are also capable of the greatest cruelty? Have you noticed that trend?
Yes, I've noticed that a lot. I've noticed it with a lot of TikToks as well. I think it's a little bit of a trend.
It's not like the right was going to simply let this kind of cultural phenomenon fade away without a fight. But that's not really all that important. It's just Libs of TikTok doing her own circuit in the media as a victim. Even if it's well-deserved, it's still part of the game. Lorenz's criticism is that Libs of TikTok is a locus of influence in the culture war. This is obviously correct, but it's not entirely clear to me that Libs of TikTok is somehow the aggressor or the aggrieved party in this exchange. From the point of view of Lorenz, Libs of TikTok is in the wrong because at the end of the day it's just politically expedient. Lorenz's political agenda is better served without a watchdog pointing out the subversion to the normies. However, from the point of view of Libs of TikTok, Lorenz is in the wrong because it's also politically expedient. Libs of TikTok's political agenda is better served by her remaining anonymous and unimpeded in exposing subversion. But how about from the point of view of the normies themselves? From that position, it seems to be the case that Lorenz is in the wrong, because the normies would undoubtedly object to a lot of the shit that Libs of TikTok exposes. And the counter-argument that Libs of TikTok just takes things out of context, and that with the proper context, normies would be more accepting of what's going on, just doesn't seem to be true a lot of the time. To me, it seems like neither party is acting in line with any sort of principled anti-doxing stance. Libs of TikTok has no problem publishing faces, names, and jobs of people on her platform, hoping the public's wrath will fall upon them. Taylor Lorenz has a history of doing the same thing to advance her own career. Both have stretched the truth to make a point. Libs of TikTok is often a lot meaner than she needs to be in her snide comments that she attaches to videos. Meanwhile, Lorenz is absolutely a crybully who plays the victim card to the max, while still being cute and cheeky when those same actions benefit her. Where Libs of TikTok might be a little bit too edgy or maybe even a little bit cruel for some people's tastes, Lorenz is absolutely a person who fake cries and actively seeks out victimization as a method of furthering her career. But most importantly, the way that each of them operates exposes a huge values difference. Libs of TikTok thinks of exposing people as exposing their behavior. Even if she misses context or gets something wrong or falls for fake news, she is focused on the behaviors of these subversive prog activists, what they're doing with the power over children that they currently wield. But Lorenz thinks of exposing people as exposing their identities. There is no criticism of Libs of TikTok's behavior coming out of Lorenz that actually holds up, because Lorenz is happy to do the same thing when it's in her interest. And striking all the hypocrisy from the record, the only thing that she has to say about Libs of TikTok is right-wing bad. That might be a good virtue signal, but it's not a good argument. Where Libs of TikTok points to bad behavior and says, look at what these people are doing, Lorenz points to a hidden identity and says, look at who my political opponent is. It's an important distinction, and to me, it's at least partial evidence that the progs are scared of the effectiveness of what Libs of TikTok is doing. They're using the same tactic they've always leaned on for over a decade now. Dox, intimidate, defund, or get fired somehow if possible in order to silence political opponents. If Libs of TikTok stops posting, they automatically win, which is why they're exploring every avenue to see it through. But Libs of TikTok has only grown, not diminished in influence. They're even being cited as an inspiration in Florida's recent Don't Say Gay law.
Hate and homophobia is lurking right beneath the surface in American politics right now. Years of increasing acceptance of gays and transgenders is provoking a backlash on right-wing talk shows and in state houses. That's the backdrop for this Washington Post piece about Libs of TikTok, a Twitter account that shares and sometimes ridicules public posts from progressive educators and others deemed libs. Taylor Lorenz's story revealed the identity of the conservative woman running Libs of TikTok, and now there's a roiling debate about her story and the ethics of it, but there's no debating the influence of the Libs of TikTok account. It's even helped inform Florida's recent parental rights law deemed the Don't Say Gay bill by opponents.
Which is likely one of the big reasons that Taylor Lorenz targeted her in the first place. Libs of TikTok isn't perfect, sure. She sometimes stretches the truth to make a point, because sensationalism is what makes a tweet go viral, not necessarily the facts. But at the end of the day, she is shining a spotlight on the behavior of some pretty bad people, using nothing but their own words. And if I had to choose, Libs of TikTok is preferable to the naked opportunism and hypocrisy of Taylor Lorenz. Here's a quick addendum that I'm recording during editing, guys. Tim Pool ended up taking out a billboard in Times Square that says, Taylor Lorenz doxed Libs of TikTok. Dude, I bet most people walking through Times Square have no fucking idea what's going on. Why did you think this would be a good plan? I mean, it's funny, but it's a giant waste of money. But look at Lorenz's reply. This billboard is so undeniably idiotic. It's hilarious, but don't forget that these campaigns have a much darker and more violent side. I'm grateful to be at a newsroom that recognizes these bad faith, politically motivated attacks as a strong security team. The abuse that women over 40 have to deal with in this industry is horrifying. Make it make sense, America. You make it make sense, Taylor. Did you not do the exact same thing you're whining about to Libs of TikTok by showing up at her home? Did she not suffer from the same horrifying abuse from you? Tim's reply was to say, I'm not discrediting your reporting. I've repeatedly said it was justified, and publishing a name, we can argue the merits. I'm calling you out for lying when you and Washington Post denied linking to private details. You published Libs of TikTok's private address. Just own it. I'm glad to hear you're not upset and your friends and fans are also happy. It's the way it should be. You make a statement, I contest it. We all made our points heard. You on CNN, me in Times Square. Now we move on. Completely reasonable take. Tit for tat. You both get the spotlight shown on you. You hash it out. Welcome to the public sphere. Of course, Taylor's not interested in any kind of mutual back and forth. She thinks that she has a license to simply harass whoever she wants and they shouldn't be able to speak back. My family and friends aren't happy. They have been subject to non-stop stream of hateful attacks, doxing, and violent attacks driven by this baseless campaign. I'm happy to hear you're moving on. Oh, fuck right off. You are loving this shit. This is the most traction your career has ever gotten. You are going to milk this victimhood into a promotion, and we both know it. You're over here whining over getting the clapback you deserve. You are a crybaby, and I don't care how many crocodile tears you shed over having done to you what you have built a career out of doing to others.
You've been doxxed, you've been threatened, you've been harassed by Tucker Carlson just for calling out online harassment.
They'll threaten children, they'll threaten my parents. I've had to remove every single social tie. I had severe PTSD from this. I contemplated suicide. It got really bad. You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life. And it's...
I bring a message from Her Majesty Taylor Lorenz. Freedom to any man who identifies the slave known as Libs of TikTok. I'm Libs of TikTok.
No, I'm Libs of TikTok. I'm Libs of TikTok.
I'm Libs of TikTok. Oh, I'm Libs of TikTok. I'm Libs of TikTok.
I'm Libs of